I grew up playing baseball. I've umpired, I've coached. So, now I give back in the form of volunteering for Little League umpiring. It's the least thankful job, the most thankless job there is out there. Right. But again, I'm out there with the kids, and, there are plenty of families out there that, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. And for me to be the Little League umpire that also happens to be the chiropractor, again, it's about establishing trust, not necessarily getting the message out first, right? But saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here in a different capacity for you right now. But if you need me for anything, or you want to just have this talk, then there you go.
Well, hello, everybody. Dr. Ron Oberstein, president of Life Chiropractic College West, coming to you with another one of our fabulous Life by Life Wests. As usual, I'm always joined by my partner in life, my partner in health, and my partner in everything in my world, Mary Oberstein. Hi, Doc.
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good to see you. We just saw each other just a little bit ago, but we're in different parts of the city. So, but today we got a great guest, and someone that I've known for many, many years. I'm not sure, Rich, if I knew you before you started chiropractic school, but I know for sure when you were here. We've got Dr. Rich Doss, and Rich graduated from Life West in 2016. He immediately went down to San Diego and started practicing in San Diego. And then right from there, he was there for I don't know how many years, Rich, but you ended up moving to Texas. And it was a family decision to move to Texas. And he's in Houston now, but still practices in San Diego and just outside of Houston. So he's running two practices. Just doing phenomenal things. He's always been a community person. He's been involved in he's been involved in the California Chiropractic Association. He's been involved at the school, a leader at the school. I mean, he was like president of student council and just actually was one of three people along with Dr. Sean Drake who started our Sports Performance Institute back in the day. And he's just a phenomenal person. And now he's president of our Alumni Association. No, why not? Right? It's like, things always fall to the people who can carry the most, right? Kind of deal. But Rich is a leader in our profession and will be a bigger leader as years go on. And he's just a wonderful human being. He's got two beautiful children and a wonderful wife. They've been married 8 years, but together for almost 20. And he just leads a lifestyle that's truly conducive to chiropractic and living from within. So, Rich, we're excited to have you today, man. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. I'm so happy we could do this.
Absolutely. Sometimes they sound like eulogies and sometimes they're introductions. I think this was an intro, that's just something that happens. They were here. When they introduced me, it's kind of like, just stop right there because I haven't died yet. But I love it, man. It's great to have you. And I know Mary was telling me last night, she goes, I'm so excited to be on this with Rich, tomorrow, because, you just got such cool stuff going on in your life and the balance of everything, kids and young kids.
Or at least the attempted balancing.
Yeah, you're walking the tightrope sometimes, I know. But hey, before we jump into it, share with us, what was your path into chiropractic?
Yeah, well, you know what? It actually started pretty young for me. I played baseball growing up, and I was prone to getting hurt because I was one that would dive for the ball any chance I could. And I remember my mom taking me to her chiropractor. I was maybe just started high school. And I remember, the chiropractor was ultimately always the one that got me back on the field. And one day, as I was, in my senior year, this chiropractor told me, "You're going to make a great chiropractor." And I said, "Dr. Novak, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't even consider that. I had no real knowledge of what it took to be a chiropractor or anything. I just knew, hey, this guy's a cool guy, and I'm glad that he's telling me this. But whatever. Okay, great." And he said, "When you go to chiropractic school, you're going to go to Life West, okay?" And I said, I still have no idea what you're telling me, and I have no idea where this is at. But okay, great. Well, I did look into it a little bit more, found out, you know what, this sounds like a pretty cool thing. And again, I'm looking at it from the patient perspective saying, I'm getting results. I feel great. I'm playing better, right? So why not be able to do that for others? Well, career path took me in a different direction. And actually got into public relations. I went to school for public relations, graduated with a public relations degree, and that's where I started. And went up to Sacramento, where I met my wife, Heather, and ultimately wasn't happy with the reward. I didn't feel like I was getting out of it what I needed to, emotionally, physically, everything. It just didn't feel like the right place for me. And Heather could feel that I was in a slump. And she said, you know what? I got you a gift certificate. I know you've gotten chiropractic before. Why don't you go see a chiropractor, see if there's anything going on. Now, she had no idea that I had this talk in years past with another chiropractor about potentially joining that profession, right? So I go see this other chiropractor in Sacramento. And I don't know, we're maybe 3 visits in, real early on. He goes, you know what? Why didn't you become a chiropractor? What is going on with these chiropractors telling me I need to become a chiropractor? This is weird. This is really weird. And he said the same thing. He said, well, if you ever do consider a change, consider that. And I'll tell you, I went to Life West, and that's where I would start. And I said, there's way too much here to not investigate this again. And, it turns out, luckily I had started college as a physics major. So I had the basic sciences necessary. I had a 4-year degree. And again, ultimately it was at that point that I said, you know what, I need to reflect on this. Am I getting everything out of life that I need? Something is missing. What is it? And it turned out to be chiropractic. And, that's where the journey started up again. Is with that conversation up in Sacramento about leaving what I was doing there, ultimately just reviving everything, the excitedness I had about doing what it was what I was choosing as a career path and all of that. I haven't looked back since. So
that's great. Mary, what's your favorite line? Remember that, you're always telling chiropractors, it's so easy just to say.
What?
I'm not about have you ever thought about being a chiropractor?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. What I'm thinking is like you were nudged the first time, you didn't get it. So chiropractic came back and it literally hit you over the head.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. It starts with that question. Have you ever thought of being a chiropractor?
Yeah. And I'm glad it didn't take a third time. I listened the second time.
Me too. Me too.
Well, it's amazing, and I got to tell you, because Mary and I talk about this all the time, and that in the office, I mean, she'd always be saying, I'd hear it all the time when I was in there, when we were together, she'd be just saying to someone, hey, have you thought about being a chiropractor? And then later she'd say it like 5 times different. I'd say, who are you talking to? And she'd say, oh, I was talking to so-and-so, so-and-so. It didn't matter. Some were like in their 50s and 60s, and some were like 8 years old. It didn't matter. Just always planting the seed, right? And then your seed was planted. That's amazing.
And I didn't say it to everyone. I was selective. I didn't lie to people and be like, "You'd be a great chiropractor." In my head, I'd be like, "No." Well, so I have a ton of questions now because I don't think on a Life by Life West. I don't know, Ron. Have we ever had anyone who practices in 2 states? I would say no to that.
No.
Okay.
Simultaneously? No.
Yeah. Okay. So, because I have so many questions now about that, like just how does that look? How do you make that work? Like, first of all, like just what does it look like? Like, how do you do it?
Sure. Well, what I'm doing right now is, San Diego, I'm still based out of, and I'm there a couple of work days a month. Okay. Sometimes I'm able to be there 3 or 4 days a month. And I pack the schedule knowing that that's when I'm coming back. And I have certain people that specifically like to see me. And those are really the people that I go back to. But I also help Dr. Mark Burdett, who welcomed me to that office, right after I graduated. I started working with him day 1 out of school. And, I try to give him a little break too when I'm in town. But ultimately, that's what I do. I see very specific people out in San Diego right now. I'm out in Houston, mostly full time. I'm just west of Houston in Katy, Texas, and I'm full time out here. And it's funny. I see very similar people, in both locations. The general practice is about family wellness. It's about athletic performance, but it is very different feels. It's very different feels practicing in California versus practicing in Texas, and not necessarily in a bad way. Just there are a lot of gatekeepers in Texas, a lot more so than I'm used to in California. And maybe it's just a symptom of going to school in California. There's a bubble. You go to school at Life West, there's a bubble, and then you practice in the state. Well, Life West really is designed to help you practice, right? You pass the boards, and then ultimately it's designed to help you practice in California. But then you come out here and you're practicing with TCC grads and Parker grads, and they have a very different path. And so what most people know about chiropractic, not just the general population, but the medical doctors out here, we do a lot of work with personal injury too. Medical doctors, neurologists, they have a very specific idea of what chiropractors do in Texas. And it's very different than what I was taught and what I practice. So yeah, it was a very eye-opening experience, and it still is.
That cultural aspect is really important because I mean, you could go to, and whether you're in Miami or whether you're in, New York City or whether you're in Los Angeles, and you go into a grocery store, or wherever you might go, and the food will be very different than if you're in, Tupelo, Mississippi. And I'm not saying good, bad, and different, but, it's just going to be different. If you could be in areas of Katy, Texas, whatever, because you're right. I never thought about that the population is what determines, what people bring in, right? And the consumer is what determines that, but it's also being led by what they've learned and moving that in that direction. And are you seeing like less vitalism? Are you seeing more like in the attitude I'm talking about, not in your practice, but are you seeing more like, my chiropractor just gets me out of pain and then I'm gone kind of stuff, or what's it look like?
That's a great question. I'm going to say I think the awareness is that I think everybody's awareness of what chiropractic is out here is by and far more mechanical than it is what I've experienced in California. And it offers me a great opportunity. Maybe coming from this public relations background, this is my opportunity here in Texas to educate and make people more aware of what chiropractic can do for them. Not necessarily, let's just talk about range of motion and pain, right? It really is a more full conversation about what chiropractic can do for overall health, wellness, the balancing of the nervous system, all of that stuff. And I've had some great conversations out here, that don't start off so well because, people aren't ready for that sometimes, they have this in mind.
That was my question. How receptive or how open are they to your conversations?
I would say everybody out here tends to be very, very open. Once they peel back a couple of layers, they know you're coming from California, and they say, okay, well, hold on a minute. Let's slow things down. Let's dip the toes in first before we start having conversations about things, healthcare included, right? But yeah, you know what? Ultimately, everybody out here is very open, very welcoming. And that's something that I maybe wasn't prepared for. You get stigmas about all states, right? And living in California, all you hear about is a couple of states right on the other side of the political spectrum. And then, to actually be here and work with the people, work with everybody from all lines of work. It's great. Yeah. It's been a very eye-opening experience in that regard as well.
Yeah. The difference too, when you live in a city, even like San Diego, which, used to be, Mary and I were there, we started there,
33 years.
Yeah. Well, no, we were there longer than that. But I know, how many years are you right now in practice?
Me?
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I'm 33 years. No, gosh.
I think you're 36. But
36.
Yeah, there you go. So we're there for, and I was there before you. But but the interesting thing is, and Rich, you saw how it grew too. It grew pretty fast. San Diego. But you get a flat tire on the side of the road, and people are going to zoom towards you and around you. They're not going to get, but there's areas like where you are probably in Texas where 5 people will get out of their car and come and help you, and say, hey, what do you need? Or put you in put you in the truck and take you to the nearest station. I mean, there is that difference. And I think that people are people, and just depending what lifestyle they're living. But I think it's just so cool that you're kind of like, you're almost bi-coastal. I don't know how close Houston is, like to Corpus Christi, that area where the ocean is, or whatever that is, or the bay. I'm not sure exactly where Corpus Christi is on.
It's about an hour for us to get to the bay.
Yeah. So you're there. You go to San Diego, you're in the bay, kind of thing. It's just, but it's really amazing, and the balance. How do you keep the balance? Because obviously you got 2 young kids, and Heather is really escalating on her path, and. How do you guys keep the balance with that?
It's been really tough. It's been really tough. And I'm sure you guys encountered the same thing, right? When you took over the presidency at Life West, right? Then you have to figure out, what does this mean for my practice? What does this mean for my family life? I can imagine I understand a few of those things now. And, I couldn't do it without my partner either. Heather has done so much for me to be able to allow this process to happen and for me to grow professionally. And the kids have been great. Our extended family, my parents, her parents, luckily are at the point where they're all retired at this point. So if I've got a week that I know I need some more intense work to be done, I know I can count on somebody to help with the family life. And ultimately that's how the balance is. I have to sacrifice some things for others, and sometimes it's sacrificing time at the office to be able to go to a t-ball game. But we make it work. And I think we've been in Houston now for a little over 2.5 years. So we've had some trial and error, and certainly enough error will teach you the lessons that you need to know.
Yeah, and the ultimate plan obviously is you're going to go back to California, right? That's the goal, right?
That is the ultimate plan. Yes. The ultimate plan is to go back to California, to be in that practice in Poway, which I know if you're in San Diego, you know where Poway is at, but ultimately Poway is Poway. It's a very small community, but it's in San Diego. Yes. So that is the plan. Yes.
I didn't know that. So I have a question. So like the people that are your patients in San Diego, when you're not there, because you're only there a couple of days a month, are they getting adjusted by Dr. Burdett or? Okay. So
yes.
So it's like it's got to be a little bit tough for them too, because I'm guessing that they loved you and they can't wait to get back. Right. And,
yes.
And they probably settle for another doctor until you get there. But
there are certain services that I provide specifically for them when I'm back. Yes. We'll put it that way.
Okay. So it sounds like a good balance there too, that it's working.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think that's another thing, I've gone through a couple of different iterations of employment as far as, being an associate, being an independent chiropractor, being, a general employee, being a clinic director, all of these things. Right. And I can't believe how lucky I was to find Dr. Mark Burdett, and when I was in school, I'd go through and visit other chiropractors' offices when I was in town. Heather and I still traveled when we were, when I was in college, right, to family and all this other stuff. And I would always go visit, see how docs were doing it in these places. And when I found him, I knew there's a chemistry here. I can work with this. And I think ultimately that trickles down to the patient care too, right? If it's something that we work with, even if we don't have the same hands, we don't have the same technique, we're the same thought, we're very congruent in the way that we work. And that is something that I'm lucky to have that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And, I want to jump. If you don't mind, guys, I want to switch for a second because you graduated undergraduate with a degree in what'd you say in public relations?
Public relations.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously that's a huge thing to be able to know how you can get out and make relations in the public, right? I just reversed the words, aren't I brilliant? And
see what you did there.
And you saw what I did there. I'm just so obvious. Anyways, and now you're practicing, you're in San Diego, for we'll just say a week, because obviously you're there for 3 or 4 days. So a week a month, and then you're in Texas for the other time period, and you're growing both practices and doing that. And you've got a mechanism obviously for how you get out in your community, right? How you're spreading your word, and a chiropractic out. And what are some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, well, in public relations, you're taught that the reason you're out there building relationships in the first place is to establish trust, right? Because ultimately everybody's got an agenda. That going into every talk you go to, right? And at least if they know who's behind the curtain, right, and there's trust that's established there, then you can become, in my case, the trusted professional in this area, right? How many chiropractors are in Houston, Texas, right? And for me to be out giving back to the community, that's how I establish trust. And you asked, who is it I'm looking at? Well, okay, I go to the gym. Okay, there's a community of people. They already are there for a reason. They have a reason. That is, they want to be more healthy, right? So there's a good place to start. And if I can give back, if I can do videos on, some different recovery exercises. Hey, if you've got a knee issue and you just want to know, hey, did I kind of overuse it on those box jumps? I'll create a video and we can support your members and we can support the members of this gym. And of course, when they have questions, they know they can approach me if they see me at the gym, and we start there. Right. And, I volunteer for little leagues. I grew up playing baseball. I've umpired, I've coached. So, now I give back in the form of volunteering for little league umpiring. It's the least thankful job, the most thankless job there is out there. Right. But again, I'm out there with the kids, and, there are plenty of families out there that, they don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. And for me to be the little league umpire that also happens to be the chiropractor, again, it's about establishing trust, not necessarily getting the message out first. Right. But saying, hey, I'm here for you. I'm here in a different capacity for you right now, but if you need me for anything or you want to just have this talk, then there you go. And I've always approached like the Chamber of Commerce with the same thing.
Yeah. It's so important. And I think what you just said is like really important for our viewers to hear, because, a lot of people go into a relationship transactional, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to this meeting to see how many new patients I can get, or see, instead of the relational part, right? The transaction can come when the trust is established, right? And that's when they come to you as a patient, or they ask you to do something as a doctor, right? And I think that's so important, because, a lot of people, I believe, are just trained to say, I'm just going to go to every single person I can, and da 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 da, and it's all about transaction. And you're so right, man. You build that relationship, right? Any business, that's why they always say business deals were business deals done on the golf course, or, wherever, because you're in a relational situation. You're not in a boardroom, where everyone comes in with their suits and ties and we got to strike a deal kind of, thing. So I think that was key, very, very key.
I was just going to say, like, I've probably heard this before. But like when you were talking, I was like, it was as if that's the first time I've ever heard that. And I'm thinking that's brilliant, because I thought about how many times I've when I was in practice, walked into gyms and businesses, can we do a talk? And it's so uncomfortable. It's hard, even when you do the talk, because they don't know me, right? Whereas it sounds like what you do is you just get people to know you, and then they find out you're a chiropractor. You're never shoving stuff down their throat, talking about subluxations when you're when you're coaching, but they trust you. And I'm sure like you're dropping seeds all the time about chiropractic and health and living and all that stuff, so that it's like, it's a natural evolution. But it's like, my mind is kind of blown, because it's like, I've heard this before. This is the first time I really got it, that it is like, Ron, you just said that about the relationships, and in our practice, how we grew our practice was, all the people that we golfed with, worked out with, were in kids groups with, became our patient base.
And they connect you with others, right? And to work so hard for just one person to come into your office, it's not about that. But if you can create that relationship, the gym is a great example of that. I don't see much of the ownership in the office, right? But the owners know me. Look, if you need a chiropractor, you go to see Rich. You don't go see anybody else. And so they're the ones that are constantly connecting me. They're the ones in the gym 24/7. I'm only there for 45 minutes, every couple of days. Right. So ultimately, those relationships are really to create those kind of connectors too, right? Not necessarily, one for one kind of, hey, I got a new patient out of this visit, right? It's you build those relationships, because those are ultimately the people that are going to connect you with the people you should be in front of.
Yeah. Right. And I think one of the keys you said, because all the things you talked about are things you like to do. And that's the key too. You like to work out, then that's where you're going to create relationships. You love coaching, so that's where you're going to create relationships. You like, whatever someone else might like, going to knitting clubs or book clubs or whatever. That's where you create the relationships. And you're so right, Rich, because when people would ask, like, where are your new patients coming from? I mean, Mary, we didn't go out. We did a lot of legwork at the very beginning. We were doing screening back in the mid 80s, but after, people were coming in, it was all referral based. We would do things in our office for referrals, right? We'd have, special days and special weeks or things like that, every once in a while, but it was all because you build relationships and you care about people, and I can ask you, how's your mom doing? because you had told me she wasn't doing well. And then, and then I can, on a relationship level, on a very trusting level, you talk about building trust, be able to say, hey, let's see what we can do. Maybe we can get her in the office and, would you like to do that? Do you think she'd be open to that? And then me and you are partnering on your mom's health now, and not your mom, of course, but I'm using it as a metaphor. But, it just would be, it's just really amazing, because it really is how it goes. But, I got to tell you that from a PR perspective, social media can do the same thing. Like, people can open up an Instagram account and do their thing where people get to know who they are, right? And, whether I'm not talking about out at a bar, not their personal page, but their business page, we'll say, they can get to know who they are, and they can bring in coaching and bring in this kind of stuff, but they really can build trust like that too, I guess, right? Because I love it, Rich. What you said was building trust, and that's the golden rule of public relations,
Mm-hmm. And you talk about social media too, and it's great to include that too, right? There's always going to be a need for inclusion of that, and some of these videos that we do end up on social media as well, and those act as a good introduction too. Some people are just scrolling through, they're looking at reels, or they're looking at, people that are coming to the office and posting, hey, I just got my adjustment, those kinds of things, right? And it creates a buzz, right? But ultimately, trust has to be created in a different way. And so utilizing both, you're always going to have to use something, always going to have to make sure you include all media, I guess. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. It's just, that's incredible. And Mary, my light bulb went off also, because, it's something that we've always known, something that everybody probably knows and says, oh yeah, wow. But we forget when we get into the world of, I'm just hunting, and that's what a lot of people do. They go on the hunt, and if they don't stop there, they'll go over here, or they'll go over there, and they're just blind to the relationship of what can I do with this group here? It's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
So I know we're kind of getting to near the end, but I have a question to ask you. When Ron got the presidency at Life West, we weren't together in the same city. And when it was announced, I think I heard on social media, and I sent him a text, and the text was, if you're looking for a leader, find the person who's already leading. And when Ron did the introduction for you, it's like it came back to me again, because it was like, you've done so much, like even as a student, as a student, you continue to do so much in the community. Like, what fuels you? Because I love that aspect, of giving back. When I was in practice, I was so in the trenches that I felt like I didn't get out in the community as much. Like, what fuels you to be able to do that, or to what's in your brain that makes you say, I got to give back? And even with the stuff you do at Life West, how you're always emceeing the wave, and you're always available. Can you speak to that?
Try to be available.
Well,
yeah, I always look at it back to those two chiropractors that told me where I should be. If it wasn't for them speaking up for me and being my advocate, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be in chiropractic. I would be unhappy somewhere else. And I want to be that kind of an influence for people, whoever needs it, and I feel like, look, if I put myself on the front lines, if I put myself out there and tell people, hey, I'm out. When you need me to be out somewhere, I will be out there. And I'm doing it for a number of reasons, but ultimately it's because I want people to know that I'm here. If you need me for anything, you have questions, you're thinking about changing a career path, those types of things, I want to be there for you, and I feel like that's how I'm going to give back to the profession in the long term is, that's my story. And if I can help push you in that direction and say, look, you can leave these other things behind. You can make this change. That's where I want to be. And so that's where I think my drive for being at the forefront and putting myself out there for these types of things it comes from that. I wouldn't be where I'm at. I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for those two chiropractors pushing for me to reevaluate what I was doing with my life. Yeah.
Yeah. And when that happened, obviously you've got a heart of service, and you enjoy serving. It's part of your DNA. I think it'd be the same thing if you weren't in chiropractic, right? It's part of Rich, and I know that from being around you. But when you look and see, and those two chiropractors were the influencers who just kind of planted the seeds, right, and then watered them, and then it just kind of hit you like that. But when you talk about service, here you are. Well, I keep going back to this. Like, man, you're in California a week a year, and then you're in Katy, Texas, a week a month, 3 weeks a month in Katy, Texas, and you've got your kids, young children, right? How old are they?
Nelson is 3.5, and Claire is almost 2.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a young family. There's a lot, and yet you still find the time to go out and serve, to go out and do community service, do things you're president of the Alumni Association. People don't get how much work that takes, and it doesn't mean that you're going out of your house, but you've got to find time when your kids are sleeping or whatever, to be able, and it's just like, it just doesn't stop, How do you balance it? I'm going back to that first question I probably had at the very beginning. What's the key? Because I think people need to understand that they can do what they want to do, or do as much as they want to do, if there's balance, and it doesn't kill. When I say it doesn't run them down, right? Because then things fall apart. How do you keep the balance?
That's important. Yeah, and I think going back to what I said about just the traveling as an example, having family as a support system has been great. But I think ultimately the broader topic is how do you set yourself up with a great team around you? And I've read before, the best way to make sure that you're going to be successful is to set yourself amongst people that are smarter than you, right? Your CA should be smarter than you. Your wife should be, well, and she definitely is smarter than you. But if you can set yourself up with a good team, then ultimately that things are going to run without your presence. And I think that's maybe been the key too, is that, when I step into some of these roles, I say, okay, who around me is somebody that I can rely on for these other things? Can I delegate? Obviously you've got to be present too. You can't just step into things thinking you can just delegate every task, right? You have to be present. And I think that is something that you have to consider when you take on these roles too, right? But ultimately, I think if you can set yourself up with a good team around you, no matter what position, no matter how many things you take on, it's going to at least help create that balance. And then it's on you to stay organized.
Yeah.
Right.
Or find the person to keep you organized, right?
Exactly.
Great.
No, it's great advice. And I think it's great. I think that's the same exact advice for someone starting a practice, someone starting their second practice, someone living in two states, kind of thing. I mean, I don't think our viewers even know. I mean, Rich, you and Heather have a house. You own a house in San Diego, and it's you go there and you spend your 4 or 5 days there, right? And then you leave and come, go back to Texas, and it's not just like getting on an airplane and flying somewhere for whatever amount of hours, 2.5, 3, 4 hours to get where you go. There's a lot that's involved, in that kind of movement, and you make it look easy, and I think that others know that it's not that easy. But it can be easy, like you said, if you just have the game plan down, right? Being able to move through it.
The game planning is very important.
Yeah.
Sometimes hard to game plan around the airlines schedules and whatnot.
Where did I run into?
It's a different topic.
I saw you at where were we at an airport? Were you was it in San Diego where you were?
It was in San Diego. Yeah.
Yeah. And we ran into each other at the airport. You were flying back to Houston. I was coming back up to the Bay Area, and we had a great talk. It was great. Yeah. Well, dude, listen, we're winding down to our time, but we always end these Life by Life Wests by asking our guests 2 questions. We're just looking for an innate response, 30 seconds, whatever it might be, but just something that just kind of hits you. And we could ask you the same question in 20 minutes, and you might have a different answer because it's that kind of a question. So I'm going to ask you the first one, and Mary will ask the second one. First question that I have that we ask is, being who you are right now, Dr. Rich Doss, if you were to look back at yourself at at Rich Doss, the first day of chiropractic college, what advice would you give him?
What advice would I give him? What I would tell him? I'd say, you're in the right place. You're in the right place. Stay where you're at.
Great.
Wow. I love it. Right to the point.
So right there, baby.
That was an easy, innate answer for me.
I love it. Okay. I'm going to ask you the second question. Okay. Now, again, with all your vast wisdom, And I'm going to ask you the same question about what advice would you give yourself, except now you've been through chiropractic school, you're licensed, you're a chiropractor. And it's like the first day of practice. What advice now are you going to give yourself?
What advice now? I'd say be open to advice from your mentors, be open to your advice from those who've been in the profession. You know, it's not just as easy as getting out and hanging your shingle. And I know that's a common phrase that we hear during school, right? It's not that easy. And you need to be open to receiving advice. And I think that's really what's ultimately helped me in Texas now. You know, you move to a different state after how many years in practice already, and you have to relearn things. You have to learn new things. Yeah. And so, you know, to be open and make sure that you continue to receive as if you were still in school. That's some advice I would give myself being the first day out of school is just make sure you stay open.
Yeah, it's great advice.
Always be a student.
Comer?
I said, always be a student. Like, you know, I'm 61 years old. I'm still learning. You know, I'm still reaching out for advice. And so I think that's great advice.
It is. It really is. And I think whether it's your first day of practice or you know, your 43rd year, you know, in life, I just loved it, man. It just hit me because, you know, we got to keep ourselves open to the process, right? You know, because the process might not look like we think it's going to look, but be open to it and be able to navigate it and move and stay in balance and just, and like you said, reach out to those mentors and listen. And, you know, because there's a lot of people, we don't have to reinvent the wheel, obviously, right? It's
right.
A huge thing.
Unless you really want to.
Yeah, I know. You know what they'll end up with? A wheel.
That's right.
It's like, I love that analogy. It's like, because, you know, it's like, yeah, reinvent it if you want to. You know, you're gonna have with a wheel. That's just what's there. Well, wow. Thank you, Rich. Listen, I'll speak for you, Mary. Also, I just appreciate your time. You carving the time out. I know we've been looking to do this for quite a while, and so thank you for carving the time out and being able to share with our viewers and you know, it's awesome what you're doing. It's awesome what you're doing for the profession. And you know, I love the idea of, you know, I want to say bi-coastal, but you are close to a coast over there, but at least
close to a coast.
At least you're traveling like that and being able to move back and forth. And I think it's just phenomenal. So we welcome you when you come back to San Diego. I think that would be great. So appreciate you so much. And
thank you both.
Yeah. And lastly,
thank you
to our viewers. We'd like to say to you, thank you for coming back week in and week out. Thank you for sharing these Life by Life West, because they're just amazing. And we're getting so many messages from people who are hearing them and living with them and learning from them. And most of all, you know, thank you for being who you are and spreading the word of chiropractic and create those relationships out there and make sure that you keep doing what you need to do so that happens. And just keep remembering that, you know, we are more powerful than we were ever taught we were. And I think that all of us can make a huge difference. And Rich, thanks again for being with us. And to everybody else, for myself, Rich, Mary, we'll bid you adieu and we'll see you at the next Life by Life West. See you later.